Our state's success has been nothing short of extraordinary. Less than 3 years ago, an unpredictable storm arose, threatening to weaken us and make us lose sight of our destination. Thankfully, we stayed on course. Throughout these turbulent few years, we never lost our direction because we always put Idaho first.
Idaho first, the theme of Governor Brad Little's fifth State of the State budget address, his first of his second term. And woven into that theme were the standard subtopics, the ESTA perpetua, I should say, hot topics that always seem to be, highlighted during these addresses. Funding education and teacher pay, property taxes, taxes in general, relief from both, infrastructure, public safety, and healthcare. Some new wrinkles, though, offered today, like offering greater learning opportunities outside of school and scholarships for high school graduates, a new statewide team to prevent deadly drugs getting into the hands of kids, an attempt to fight fentanyl. So this would be a good time now to bring in Chief Political Reporter Joe Paris and Andrew Bartline, his sidekick for today. Both of you were down at the State House today. Walk us through we heard what the governor had to say, but walk us through what the reaction is from the lawmakers who heard this State of the State address.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll start with the Democrats. Those are really my focus today. And we talked with House Minority Leader Ilana Rebell and Senate Minority Leader Melissa Wintrow. And we talked with them. They generally support this proposed budget from the governor. And Rebell told me that if they pass the budget tomorrow morning and go home for the year and end the session, well, she considers that to be a great session, but we know that's not how this is going to play out. Representative Rebell is pleased to see education get the attention, and she says meaningful investments, again, her words, but she thinks more can be done. We talked about teacher pay. The governor says his proposed budget will make starting Idaho teacher wages top 10 in the country. We heard from the state budget director that the data they're using for this is actually a little outdated by at least a year. So Rebell adds that she thinks more support is needed.
I mean, the number that I've heard from sources I've looked at are that on average, our teachers make about $18,000 a year less than the states around us. So a $6,300 pay raise is great. I'm not sure that went, but remember, all the states around us are boosting their pay too, and there's inflation and other factors. So I'm not sure that even that $6,300 pay raise will make us especially competitive, but it might at least keep our teachers from working at Burger King. It might keep passionate teachers in the profession.
Of course, more can always be done, and the Democrats, they like that focus on education, but they see this as assistance, not necessarily a solution to a problem, a step in the right direction. I imagine that the Republicans probably have a little bit of a different look, Joe.
It's interesting because Republicans and Democrats were really happy about the vision that Governor Little put out today. We're going to really shore up these teacher salaries. We're going to invest in the physical buildings. There's a lot of conversations going on, and I think that there's people on both sides of the aisle that are on the same page. But again, one of the big goals of education is teacher pay. And Governor Little, in his address, targeting the teacher pay again to be top 10 nationally, up from number 41 nationally when the governor took office. And he says, again, he wants to strengthen pay for all teachers by a little bit more than $6,300. And in total, this adds $145 million for what they're calling enhanced teacher pay statewide. So is that a good goal? Is top 10 good enough? Well, I spoke with House Speaker Mike Moyle, and he had this insight on the conversation about is it a good enough goal and what else to consider?
I think it's a good goal, but I think we ought to look at also our other state employees. I think that we have a real divergence between. We've got the low end that I think is getting too much, and if we're not careful how we push the low end up, it could be at the expense of the upper end. So the devil's in the details. Would I love to see our starting salary go up? Yes, but we got to be careful that we don't penalize those on the top end, but it's the same with the other state agencies. A lot of those guys are way underpaid for what they do.
So fair play there, Brian.
Okay, so property tax is something that we touched on, or the governor touched on, of course, $120 million to defray some of these local property taxes. There's a big surplus out there. Yeah. How is that going to be? $1.5 billion? Is that correct? Is that what we're looking at? That's what okay, so what's that going to get to? So
the surplus, we'll have to find out, but the idea here for property tax relief is they're taking $120 million, and that $120 million is basically given to the legislature, and they're saying, okay, and by they, I mean the governor, is saying, here's $120 million. It's not for something specific, but do something to address property tax relief. So no, there's not an official idea of where every dollar is going to go on this $120 million that Governor Little mentioned. But Mike Moyle commented specifically on that and implied that even more money would be great, more than $120 million. But this is complicated, Idaho property tax rates, because the equation of having some options at the state level, well, at the same time, at the local control, that plays a major factor. So something's got to give. And Speaker Speaker Moyle also mentioned that if you benefit a tax policy in one area, property tax, for example, here in this conversation, that likely needs that tax policy needs to be compensated or substituted somewhere else. So the news of $120 million for lawmakers to use is welcome, but Moyle says that there are some early ideas that they still need to work through. But major policy decisions, Moyle says, come with the caveat of being careful.
Several ideas that are out there. You've got Representative Groves, which deals with the homeowners exemption. You've got Representative Monks, which deals with some education spending. So there's several ideas, and as they work together, I think they'll find a solution that hopefully will provide some meaningful property tax relief. But in the middle of whatever we do there, we've got to be careful that we don't open the door like happened in 2006 with House Bill 1, where we cut taxes on property down to 20+%, and within a few years the local governments through their budgets raised the property taxes back up. We got to be careful that whatever we do, we constrain that growth so we don't provide a one-time relief that gets sucked up again later by those locally elected officials.
So the intricacy here now is going to be, you heard there's some early ideas, which one will be the winner? That was very controversial last year.
Okay, so then on the other side of that, Andrew, the Democrats have a take on that kind of idea when it comes to property tax.
Yeah, they're looking at it through a much different lens. They're kind of looking at how can we accomplish multiple things at once. You might have heard that term, like killing two birds with one stone. Kind of the angle they're looking at is sort of by looking at property taxes and what are they used for, and then working backwards. We know property taxes largely fund local schools. Well, Senate Minority Leader Melissa Wintrow says the $120 million should then go directly to Idaho schools. It should fund deferred maintenance in school buildings and potentially help build new buildings that are needed as Idaho grows. It's another investment in education, and it can also lower property tax burdens at the same time. Wintrow gave a good breakdown on why this is a direction that she supports.
As the fastest growing state in America, we're going to have serious overcrowding problems, which we already have, and we're going to need to build new schools, and which will drive the school facilities need well over $1 billion. The governor has earmarked $120 million for undetermined property tax relief, which in our view should be allocated to school buildings, which would accomplish two things. It could fix our school buildings and lower property taxes, as school bonds are a substantial component of property tax bills. But the $120 million, if we can get it, is at best a resolution of 10% of a more than $1 billion problem.
So again, the Democrats say this is by no means a solution to the problem. They estimate $1 billion is needed to fix all these deferred maintenance, new schools that will be needed as Idaho continues to grow, but they think this is a step in the right direction.
And there are other ideas, of course, what to do with this surplus. You touched on it there with schools and stuff. That's just a sliver of kind of like the whole infrastructure. That's kind of the other side of this, isn't it?
Yeah, and we can't bring up public dollars in Idaho with not talking about that surplus, Brian. And the governor even suggested spending $1 billion of that surplus on infrastructure needs. That could be things like bridges, airports, even broadband. Now, we talked with Representative Rebel, and she likes this idea. She pushed back on the narrative, though, of spending the surplus on investments, because from her view, she says there's not a surplus in the first place. She says Idaho has neglected to spend money on necessities for years, so this money should have been spent in an ongoing manner the whole time. It should have never pooled up in a bank account to begin with.
We're one of only 4 states with no pre-K. We have desperately underpaid teachers. We have over $1 billion in schools that are falling apart. And then there's other areas that you can't, we're not paying our, say, in-home care providers, those people who go visit the elderly and help make sure they're clean and safe in their homes when they're in advanced age. They're making like $12 an hour. We can't get any of those people to work. We're so underpaying everybody at every stage of the system that the system's at breaking point in so many facets. So I think, the money on the bottom line is largely a function of our not living up to, in some cases, constitutional obligations to fund things like schools.
So it's kind of that tight line to walk. Yes, we support these investments and dipping into the surplus, but no, we don't think there should have been a surplus to begin with. So agree to disagree, whatever you want to call it. The Democrats like the idea that this money is getting spent on things that they think are needed as well.
There's money to spend. Okay, so very briefly here, Joe, I know Medicaid was brought up during today's State of the State. That's been talked about a couple years before as well.
So this was the voter-approved Medicaid, and now in its 5th year, it's in the review year, as they call it. So lawmakers are going to take a look at the performance of it, the cost of it. And there are concerns from some Republicans, including Speaker Moyle, who we heard from, who say maybe this isn't performing the way that we had hoped or the way we were told it was going to in terms of cost, in terms of the Your Health Idaho Health Exchange. So there's going to be a lot of conversation in the legislature about funding Medicaid, and along with education, I think those will be two huge topics with property tax.
It all starts tomorrow.
It's already started, Brian.
It is already started.
Boy.
All right.
Here we go.
We'll continue when we come back.